Is this mirrored for them?
Potentially.
There's not potential. This is mirrored. Okay, hey, so I recently got kind of a like type policed and then did a typing session, and it has kind of reoccurred to me. Maybe I'm an ENTJ or maybe I'm an INJ. So what I want to kind of do in this is do kind of like a group brainstorm. So the reason I'm doing this is live is because I basically want other people's input. I'm in a little bit of a analysis paralysis about this point. I think it's been about a week since I really started considering ENTJ once again. And so I just need some more thoughts. I need some finality to this. I can't just stay in analysis paralysis this whole time. So this is Garrett. This is my husband.
Hello.
He's predominantly here for one, to keep my communication style normal. When I talk to a camera, I'm doing it right now. It's a little fake, but when I start talking to him, it'll be a little bit more realistic. Um, so he's gonna ask me some questions about like my type journey, what has all happened. Then I'm gonna get into some of these thoughts. You probably can't see them that well. This is potentially mirrored. I guess maybe write in the comments if this is mirrored for you guys. Unfortunately, I don't know what to do about that if it is mirrored. And then I want to hear some kind of like your guys' thoughts, and then maybe predominantly so that you guys could ask questions that would maybe help me, and then I could answer them. We get thoughts. If we think I'm an ENTJ or an INTJ. So yeah, that's basically what we're doing. So we're gonna start off with the question portion.
Sweet. All right. Tell me about when you first took the Myers-Briggs test and found out about Myers-Briggs personality system.
So, and I'm gonna intentionally try to talk to him just so that it's a little bit more normal. But I apologize, it's a little bit of a bad user experience. I first found out, my friend asked me in college to take it. So I think I was probably 19. The result that I got was ISTJ. I read the description and I was like, I guess this is sort of like me. My friend, was an ISTJ, and we do get compared kind of a lot. And so I was like, I guess it's plausible I'm an ISTJ. I didn't read any other options. I was like, man, it's probably just a bad test. There was a significant chunk that I didn't really like. It wasn't until probably about a year later, my friends were still talking about it. I went on Pinterest and I saw some stuff, and I saw some INFJ stuff, and I was like, oh wow, I'm really relating to this. I think a big chunk of that is because of the way that NI is kind of glorified online. And I'm like, wow, they're really explaining this. I think probably just like puffing the ego a little bit. And so I asked my friends about it. I'm like, I think maybe I'm an INFJ. They're like, you are not an F. Like all my friends were basically like, you're not an F. My friends were sure about it. They're like, there's no way you're an F. So then I was like, well, what's the deal? I was like, this intuition thing. I was like, I'm feeling this intuition thing is really resonating. And then I found INTJ and I was like, oh yeah, the TE, that seems right. The NI, that seems right. So that's what happened so far.
Nice. What other types have you considered, and how certain have you been of INTJ?
Once I learned about cognitive functions, and I learned about them initially from Personality Hacker, I considered every type. I have at length considered every type. I'm the ones that I spent the most time considering were ENTJ, INFJ, ISTJ. I don't know if I said INTP already, but INTP, briefly, a lot of them. I've spent a lot of time considering a lot of them. ENTJ is the one that I've came back to for years. That's the one that I still come back to years later is ENTJ.
How certain have you been historically of being an introvert?
Pretty certain. Now, when you think of the word, when people talk about, kind of, I don't know if colloquially is the right word, but when people talk about the word introvert, a lot of times you're talking about this person reads a lot and they go in their room or whatever, and the extrovert's the life of the party, and that's kind of what you get, introvert, extrovert. In those definitions, I'm like textbook introvert, pretty much. And then I heard that, it's in your first couple decades of life that you're really in that first cognitive function. Then in your 20s, you get into your second cognitive function. So then I was really trying to analyze my childhood. Was I an introvert as a childhood? And as a child, was I an extrovert? And I did come along with the definition that TE is not the typical extrovert. It's not social, but it is interested in kind of the external, how things work. And in that regard, I'm very 50-50 on how sure, when you take away the sociability aspect, because I do feel like I am a bit of a recluse. However, I'm thinking about work and getting things done a lot of the time, which I think points to TE. So.
How certain have you been about being an intuitive as we go through the 4 letters?
That's I've been quite sure about that. Um, Mostly in contrast to others in particular. So, like my mom's an ISFJ, and I'm like, okay, when I'm around her, I'm like, I'm definitely an intuitive. My dad's an ISTP. When I'm around him, I'm definitely an intuitive. Now, there are some people when I'm around them. If you look at maybe like rational typology, when I'm around them, sometimes like maybe I'm not as intuitive as them. I would say I'm probably 80% sure. The thing that makes me a little less sure is I speak sometimes in very usable real world language. I do associate that with TE, so you get a little less of that woo woo nature than you get
Mhm.
from NFs.
Yeah. How certain have you been about being a thinker?
Um, that one I've wavered a bit. So I have taken cognitive function tests. Like I think Dario Nardi was the one who came out with a cognitive function test. And I think it came out that I was most likely to be an INTJ. The next most likely was an INFP. So I test pretty highly for FI. The next one that was most likely was ENTJ. And that was because my then TE was kind of the next. So um I've always been kind of like, I think I'm pretty balanced. I'm very certain of the TEFI axis.
Mhm.
But there have been times that I've wavered on thinker or feeler.
Nice.
But like as an example of that, when I first was taking the test, and I was like, I think I might be an INFJ, and my friends were like, no, you're definitely a thinker. So I think that's a little telling.
Yeah. Okay, last one. Judger. How certain have you been of being a judger?
Judger. Pretty certain. Now that one's the one that's a little bit like weirdly correlative to cognitive functions. That one, that letter is more just kind of like a code. But people, when I first learned about it, people are like, judgers keep their rooms really clean and perceivers are late and messy. So anyways, there's a lot of misunderstandings about stuff. I think hmm, uh, thinking that an INTJ is a J that leads with a perceiving function, that kind of made sense to me and resonated with me.
Nice. Cool. How do you interpret a loop versus a grip, and how those have played out thinking of yourself as an INTJ?
Um, it's hard to. I've learned a lot of stuff, and a lot of my initial learnings were from Personality Hacker, and I think that they're great. They have said some things that I think I tended to hang on to, and some stuff that I kind of let go of for the sake of it meshing with my worldview of myself being an INTJ. So one thing they said about your third function is sometimes you tend to, you loop into it unhealthily when you get stressed by it. And I have a very negative relationship with FI sometimes, and so that kind of validated that. They also would say sometimes your third function is where you go to in a time of play, and the idea that I use FI in a playful way never really made that much sense to me. But I think I kind of have overall disregarded that fact. Then the grip I kind of understood as it's also something that you tend to use negatively, but it's less often negatively. And so I've thought about, yeah, I sometimes would like when I was very depressed, would eat a ton of like McDonald's, for example. That's what I would consider maybe an SE binge. Now it's very, very, very rare. So I don't know that those are correct understandings, but that's how I've historically understood them, and that's how it kind of informed my worldview.
Okay. What have you learned about the 8 function model?
So this is the part where I think it gets a little bit more interesting. So then I learned about the eight function model, and you've got, Trickster and the critical parent and all this. And I kind of disregarded it because I would hear descriptions and it just never resonated. And this is where I'm starting to get to the point where ENTJ, that's maybe one of the best arguments you could make for me being an ENTJ is that when you consider the eight function model, the INTJ, the shadow functions just were not quite resonating. And for that reason, I was like, well, I'm definitely an INTJ. I'm an FI all the time. My SE is pretty bad. So, and for that reason, the eight function model must just not be that great. And so I'm familiar with it. I could tell you the eight functions of all types, but I haven't spent that much time with it because it just never really resonated.
Mhm. All right. What sorts of comments have you received regarding your type?
Um, okay, initially, the very first personality video I ever did, I believe, was my INTJ description versus reality video. That is a heavy FI video, in my opinion. So on that video, I got a lot of comments that I was an ISFP. Now, that's the only video in the history of my channel that got a lot of that personality type, but that being my first video, I got a lot of that. If you look at my if you
Mhm.
look at my my very very first video I ever did, it was a fashion video. You could also make a very good argument for me being an ISFP from that video alone. Now it was my first video, so I was nervous. Since then, I haven't done personality videos since last summer, but when you think of last summer when I would get comments on personality, the vast majority of them were, "Wow, finally a real INTJ," or something like that. So I would get a lot of comments like that. The next most common was ENTJ. I've gotten a large amount of ENTJs. Some of the logic's not the best with those comments. Some of it's like, wow, you get a lot done and you're happy, so you must be an ENTJ. No INTJs are happy. No INTJs ever get stuff done. So some of it is accompanied by this whole limiting beliefs, and so in some ways that made them easier to write off because I thought that the logic that went with them was not that good, so they're kind of easier to write off. And I always kind of came back to, well, I have more FI than SE, so I've got to be an INTJ. But every time I get a comment like that, like you're an ENTJ, it always makes me dip down to only 50% sure. Am I an ENTJ or am I an INTJ? I've never been 100% sure of being an INTJ, but when you do typology content, you got to put something out there. It probably would have been better for me to be more upfront with my uncertainty. But I've only ever been, I would say max, on the best day, the most sure, I was probably 95% sure I'm an INTJ. That's quite rare. I would say most commonly I'm about 70 to 80% sure. At the moment, I'm very 50-50. I'm even more leaning toward ENTJ at the moment. And this is probably the first time that the scales have ever tipped so far.
Mhm. Do you think that indecisiveness points one way or the other? Like you're thinking about it a lot?
Yeah, I think the indecisiveness points to INTJ. Um, ENTJs lead with a judging function, so they would be more decisive. And that's one reason why I haven't fully, even though I'm tipped toward ENTJ at the moment, I don't feel that I'm very decisive. When you think of like how 16 personalities, which that website has its own issues, but they call ENTJ the commander, I don't really resonate with some of that stuff. So in a little bit, we'll get to my thoughts and then we'll hear some comment thoughts.
Mhm. Cool. Okay. Going through videos of yours, which you briefly touched on, which ones point best to TE?
A lot of my most recent videos, I think, point pretty well to TE. I've got a lot of videos on goal setting, a lot of videos on money. A couple videos coming up will be about money. I've got a lot of quarterly planning. Um, the first video I ever came out with was a fashion video, but immediately after that, they were all pretty TE videos. Time management, money management, a lot of the like. A lot of my most popular videos are very TE heavy, setting systems, not goals. And I think people's
Mhm.
most popular videos would be an indicator of what their strengths are. And so if my TE heavy videos do well, I think that is a little bit of an indicator toward TE dominant.
Mhm. What about your NI videos? Which videos have you done that are most NI?
That one is quite hard to point out. It's more of a undercurrent that flows throughout. The hard part about it is, to an extent, I have edited out my NI because I haven't seen it as, or at least evidences of it. So a lot of times I'll be filming and then I sit there and I'm thinking, and that gets cut out in editing for the
Yeah.
most part. So to some extent, that function's been a little squashed. But you do see it in some analogies that I give. I think it is supplemented by the frameworks, but I think as far as the channel goes, there's not nearly as much NI.
Okay. What about your FI?
There are some videos. I did like an INTJ loop video. When I talk about like my 2021 recap, I talk about you and I separation. Got a little FI at that point when I'm talking about my feelings about things. I have a few videos about emotions, like what to do if you're depressed. All of those are a little TE heavy though. It's like what to do when you're depressed. And those FI videos don't do well. If you kind of sort videos on my channel by most popular, least popular, my feeling videos don't do well, which I think is kind of telling that it's maybe not a strength of mine that people are
Mhm.
interested in.
Yeah. And what about SE? SE videos.
I did Vlogmas in December, and I think you can see some SE in those vlogs. I think what skews it a little bit is that I felt the need that vlogs have to be a certain way and you have to be so energetic. So I did
Mm.
play up SE. What's hard about my channel is I'm not always as authentic as I could be or true to myself as I could be, which is kind of unfortunate for a time like this. And that probably does point to TE Dom if I have hidden parts of myself for the sake of metrics.
Mm, gotcha. What have you been type police as?
So to my knowledge, there have been two type police videos. One by Coach Recipio Parra. He typed me as an ISTJ because of PI signals, introverted perceiving signals first. If I remember correctly, he got a lot of NE signals. Um, that that's neither here nor there. The other type police was recent, probably in the last 2 weeks. Eric type police to me. He initially typed me as a NFJ. Um, that kept rolling around in my mind. I was like, it's not sitting well with me. I was just gonna ignore it initially, and then I was like, maybe I should. I'll just pursue. We'll see what he says. He's kind of interesting. So I actually reached out, did a session with him, and he eventually came down on to he's not quite sure, but he thinks ENTJ. So then he did a correction video. In the correction video, he made it seem like he was a little bit more sure, like she is an ENTJ. In the session, he was a little more wishy-washy, but he was thinking ENTJ.
NTJ. Cool.
I would say I don't want to make it sound like he was quite wishy-washy. He in our session, he made it seem like he was 80% ENTJ, 20% INTJ.
Right.
It had gone a little long. It had been like half an hour, so we're like, okay, we gotta end this.
Okay. And then typology YouTubers in general that you've like typing sessions that you've done. I know you've done a few. What have you been typed as?
I haven't done a lot of official typing sessions. The one with Eric was official. I did one with Amy Y. She came down to ENTJ or INTJ. I think that she was thinking ENTJ.
Mhm.
I had a little bit of pushback, like, are you sure? So we came down to you're either ENTJ or INTJ, but if I'm being honest, I think she thought that I was an ENTJ, which I guess she could verify. I've also bounced it off people. So I do a lot of like Zoom type interviews with people. Sometimes they're off air, sometimes they're on air. Rational typology is sure that I'm an INTJ. Ghost of Young. He has recommended, he's like, you should come on this INTJ chat. So he's like fine with the idea that I'm an INTJ, but he leans, I just emailed with him a couple of days ago and he said that he's leaning toward ENTJ. It happens a lot and times in videos where they operate under the assumption that I'm an INTJ and then something will happen and they'll say, are you sure you're not an ENTJ? So I think that happened with Eric Wen maybe. I'm not positive it happened with Eric Wen, but when I talked with him, he was just kind of under the assumption he operated under the assumption that I was an INTJ.
Mhm.
I've talked with Eric Wen a few times. The first time he said, I said, "Do you think I'm an INTJ?" And he's like, "What else would you be? What else is there?" At the time, I was getting a lot of comments that people thought I was a ESFP, and
Mhm.
he's like, "What? No." Of course, you can find me in different moods. When I'm around an INTP, I think the NTJ-ness comes out a lot more than when I'm
Mhm.
around certain people.
Sure. All right. Last question here. What ways do you feel like both an INTJ and an ENTJ?
Okay, so this is probably where I'll get into this. I have my thoughts here for why I think I'm an INTJ and thoughts here for why I think I'm an ENTJ. And then I'd like to open it up to ideas from the chat or questions from the chat after this. And at the moment, to clarify, I'm 60% thinking I'm an ENTJ at the moment. Now that's subject to change. Okay, reasons for me potentially being an INTJ related to NI. This is more related to being an introvert than NI specifically. I am very reclusive. Now, you wouldn't be able to tell that from a YouTube video, but basically, I work 2 hours a day, or I try to work 2 hours a day, and then I read, or I'm just reclusive the rest of the day. If people come over, I'm living with my parents right now. People come over, I just straight to my room. I'm very reclusive, and independent. I feel that I'm quite reflective compared to what I see from some ENTJs. Now, not all, but I do a lot of reading, a lot of kind of introspection, more so from what I see from a lot of ENTJs. What did I write down? Oh, I like background roles. You get this impression from some type of agents that ENTJs are just commanders. They'll take charge of anything, no matter what. Any organization, they're in charge of 12 different organizations. And I never am one to want to do that. I like background roles a lot. Like DJing is an example that could be a little INTJ, a little ENTJ. The reason DJing could be INTJ is because I like background roles that have a lot of impact. And I don't like the talking on the mic. DJing, that's why I eventually stopped doing it. But I like the big impact. with a semi background role. You know, you're in this little booth, no one's talking to you. So that's what I like about DJing. But I did eventually stop because a little too there's a little too much SE for me with DJing. If someone comes and gives a request and I'm like, what, I had this whole flow and the BPMs were going this way. So anyways, that's that. Okay, TE. Okay, TE. I could think I have TE second because I'm not that commander. I'm not take charge. Oh, okay. If you've seen Vanessa Lau, okay, Vanessa Lau, I do a lot of like YouTube research. Okay, you could look her up right now. She just came out with a video today about how she became a millionaire, a very ENTJ video. Now, her videos are full of SE, very high TE, very high SE. Now, I look at that and I say, I'm not that. Like, I'm more toned down than this ENTJ I'm looking at. So that's something that kind of skews things a little bit. I also feel that I'm not pushy. I am in my head. Okay. So in my head, I'm like, wow, they're being very inefficient. They really like they're not doing this job very well. Or they could be doing this faster, more productive. Or at church, if I'm in the media booth and I'm like, this person should be doing their job better. This person should be doing their job better. But I don't vocalize it. Now I feel like an ENTJ would vocalize it more. That could be nurture conditioning. I would say TE has been a little squashed in me over time. I don't put that much emphasis on nurture type things though. Oh, and then I put that I work 2-hour days. I feel that you see an ENTJ as being very busy, and I'm not busy. I'm like the opposite of busy. I do nothing. I work on YouTube 2 hours a day, and that's all I do. Like teaching was too SE for me. It was too busy. Okay, INTJ FI, I'm a little depressive. No, okay. I want to be careful with the way I say that. I'm not depressed, and depressive is even maybe a bad word, but I'm very focused on how am I feeling? How are my values doing? Did I just do something moral or did I not? I do focus on those things a lot. Yeah, constant assessing of morality, same thing. Okay, SE and an INTJ. I have low energy. When I first read about Enneagram 5s and then SE 4th, I feel that I have low physical energy. Now, just because I feel that I have low physical energy doesn't mean I have less energy. It also doesn't mean that I have less than other ENTJs. Did I say that correctly? Anyways, it's very hard when people say things like INTJs have less energy than ENTJs. But if I don't know which one I am, that kind of becomes hard to measure. And then, not explosive. I've heard a lot of people say that ENTJs can be very explosive in arguments. I'm not sensorily explosive. I would do more the be quiet thing, or like, let's slow this down. Okay, and then we got FE polar. Okay, this is the best argument for me not being an INTJ. FE polar, where is it? I have a video on FE polar. It turns out that I'm an ENTJ. A lot of my videos are not going to age well, but that's neither here nor there. We gotta be authentic, I guess. I think that FE has highly, no stress this enough, been encouraged in my life. I grew up with an ISFJ mom who was constantly telling me to be FE. And then I grew up in church settings. Church settings are just the epitome of gender roles, which I don't really want to get into that much. But let's just say in the setting I grew up in, FE was highly encouraged. As a 6-year-old, I was told, like the number of times I can't count to you, as a 6-year-old, some old guy would come up to me at church and be like, why don't you smile more, sweetie? And I'm fine. Don't tell me to smile more. What is your problem? So anyways, FE has been beat into me very highly. But I still think if shadow functions are correct, and if this is an accurate system, and if polar really means anything, the idea that I'm FE polar it's a stretch. It's a hard argument to make, I think. Eric, I don't know if this was meant to be an FE test. I interpret it as an FE test. So first he asked me, how are you feeling? Which I kind of considered BFI. And then he said, how do you think I'm feeling? And I thought in my head that he was bored. And he said, no, I'm very interested in this. Is very interesting. So I incorrectly guessed his emotions. So that happens a lot. I typically think people have negative emotions, like very often. Oof, okay, that's a lot. That's the INTJ side. Okay, the ENTJ side. Okay, the argument for TE Dom. I'm like 1,000% success oriented. Success is everything. Success and goals. I've always had goals. I don't know why I decided this, but when I was in 8th grade, we had our 8th grade graduation, and I saw they acknowledged the 8th grade valedictorian. It's kind of funny that they had an 8th grade valedictorian. And I said to myself, I want to be on that stage in high school. When high school comes around, I will be on that stage. And so I worked my entire high school career. All I thought about was I will be valedictorian. Then some stuff happened. I did some shady stuff, cheated on this history. I went into this. I don't really like these stories that much, but I feel like it's important, so I have to say it. So I went into the teacher's office, the teacher's classroom while they were not there, grabbed the test, looked at it, studied all the answers, spread the answers to everyone in the class. And then, of course, the teacher found out that I had cheated. I don't know. It was the dumbest thing I ever did.
Mhm.
Anyways, that points to Effie Dom, I would say. We want success, wanting success so bad that I'm going to cheat and then spread it to everyone. Obviously, one of the
TE
kids.
dumb, right?
Oh, is that what? Yeah, to eat on. Um, I don't know where I was going. I do feel that I get energy from work. If there's the idea that you get energy from your dominant function, which I think is very true, I get energy from work. I do also feel burnt out from work. I could make the argument that I get energy from NI and from TE. If I do either of them for too long, I get like if I NI for too long, I'm like, okay, I'm just feeling really lethargic. I need to move my body. And if I TE for too long, I'm like, oh, I'm exhausted. I need to just do something fun. Another argument is that extrovert does not mean social. And if I could be an ENTJ and reclusive, then sure, I could see that. I mean, I know that extrovert doesn't mean social, but it means wanting to interface, I think, with the external world. And I don't know that I do, but right now, okay, the next thing I've done is I miss teamwork. Right now with YouTube, I work alone and everyone goes to work. I'm at the house all by myself. And I liked that for a very long time. I loved that for a year. And the main reason that I quit teaching was because I couldn't stand being around people all the time. And so then I wanted to come work at home. Now I'm finally getting to the point where I miss teamwork, but I would like to be the boss. I would like to have a team under me, not a massive team, maybe 5 people that I know really well and have really close relationships with and kind of like empower them. I didn't write anything for NI second. I don't know that I have the best argument for NI second. Perhaps if your second function is considered your parent function in which you parent other people, I do think that if I ever give advice to people, it tends to be and I'm motivated. SE third. The argument for that is that I think I have more SE than any INTJ I've ever seen. If you look at like Asura Psych is someone on YouTube who's kind of widely regarded to be an INTJ. My set is a lot more SE than his. Now I feel that my set is less SE than ENTJs, but more SE than INTJs. FI, I feel that I have kind of a reactive negative FI. I don't know that my FI is particularly proactive. I mean, I do think about morals a lot, but and it is kind of judgmental. I've heard the ENTJs are more black and white with their morals and judgments. I have strong ideas about morals. I think that's very true. And then finally, SI polar. This is probably the point where you could make a very good argument. If now I think people's definitions of SI, the whole problem with there are a few problems with typology in general. The one problem is there's no objective way to find your type, which I know some people are trying to work on with Voltology or these cognitive function tests. I wouldn't say any of them are very well developed at the moment. So that's kind of a problem. There's no objective way to find your type. The other issue is there's no, what was the word for sacred text?
Oh, tabula rasa.
Tabula rasa. There's a sign. There's this theological, what's his name? Duelist, Dulles. He has a little channel. He made a video on the ethics of type policing, which was very well thought out. It's like a half-hour long video. So, anyways, that's the other issue with typology. There's no tabula rasa. There's no sacred text to reference. Now you can reference Carl Jung's stuff, but some people are like, nope, I don't believe that. So then you can go to Vanderhoot, and some people accept and don't accept that. Some people are like, nope, Myers and Briggs ruined the whole thing. Some people are like, Kiersey ruined it. So there's no sacred text really that everyone agrees on. Carl Jung probably the most people agree on, but the language is a barrier, I would say, for a lot of people being able to comprehend that. Anyways, SI. I've never showered regularly, ever, 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 ever. Now, it's probably not something people would expect from seeing me on YouTube because I always shower before I film because I want to present well. So, what was my hair looking like right now? This is pretty standard, I would say, for my hair. I anyways, I shower, like, once a week, if I so I shower Monday nights because I film on Tuesdays, and I shower Saturday nights because of church, and my hair starts to look really bad in between Tuesday and Sunday. Um, so I would consider that bad SI. In the back to bad SI in general, when they talk about, like, ENTJs cannot remember things, so they write everything down. I mean, that's what I'm doing all the time. I have to have a planner because I will not remember. Was it at 1:30 or was it at 2:30? Was it this week or next week? So that's why I have a lot of planning systems. So, yeah, for what it is, I'm sure that there are mistakes in here. What's notable about this is there's nothing for the NETI portion or the demon function, as people call it. So, is it at this point that we wanted to have people ask what they thought?
Yes, we can. So we're gonna open it up. And if you missed it, I think you can go back and watch it later. But we just went over basically everything. Some questions about ENTJ versus INTJ and her overview of those things. So now we're gonna open it up for questions you have that you think would help us determine if she's an ENTJ or INTJ.
Or comments.
Or comments, yeah. If you feel like there are insightful comments that might sway us one way or the other. And I'll go back through to the beginning too, so we don't miss stuff. But yeah, feel free to start commenting on questions and stuff.
Yeah, you might just want to, just go scroll up and then read me.
Yeah.
If you think there's enough.
All INTJs want the ENTJ leadership skills.
I
true.
do. I look at a lot of ENTJs. I do want the leadership skills. I do. I do think I look at a lot of ENTJs and they have better leadership skills than I have. I could still be an ENTJ, but I do feel that TE is underdeveloped and it could have been a nurture thing. But again, I don't put much emphasis on the whole nurture part.
Person says they've known a few ENTJs, INTJs, and think you look more like an INTJ. Noticed INTJs simply have a more internalized energy, 24 hours a day. ENTJ has a very prominent looking outside of themselves energy and never turns off.
What do you think about that? Maybe say their name when you read the comment.
Oh yeah, that was from Sir Madame. Yeah, the energy thing. That's definitely one. Initially coming on the stream, I would say I'm leaning more towards ENTJ. Energy management, I would say for an ENTJ, you have a lot less energy than I would expect for an ENTJ.
Yeah, if I'm an ENTJ, I'm a very low energy, reclusive. If I was an ENTJ, like if that's possible. It's hard because my development hasn't been what you would call natural, because I came upon typology, thought that I was an INTJ, then I came upon C.S. Joseph, and he was like, early on in the journey I did, and he's like, you should try to be, if INTJ, you should try to be more like ESFPs. So I really took that on for a long time. So at this point, because I thought that I was an INTJ, I was really dipping into NIFI. And then because I thought that I should be more like an ESFP, I did a lot of SETE. Now, coming from this vantage point, I'm not sure that that's the best advice, but that's the advice I took. And so what's that's resulted in it is someone who's relatively balanced, I think.
Yeah, I think the functions are pretty balanced compared to either type, to an ENTJ or INTJ, because it's sort of hard to pinpoint one or the other.
Yeah, it would have been nice if my development was not so controlled or purposefully. So I had the only time, the kind of the unadulterated time of my life was 19 and earlier.
All right. Dragon Slayer Rob said ENTJs are FI seeking, so that could be where you're getting the increased FI, though INTJs do dip into NIFI.
Read that again.
ENTJs are FI seeking, so that could be where you're getting the increased FI, though INTJs do dip into NIFI. Probably when you're talking about getting into your feelings and stuff.
Yeah, I do think that relationship with FI would be telling. If anyone, once we get down to it, if anyone has any thoughts on FI, particularly, I'd be interested to hear those.
Sir Madame again, observing just the way you speak right now is not ENTJ, it's inwardly focused.
Yeah, I think it's very hard. A lot of my YouTube videos are very, that's why I wanted you here because
Mhm.
I communicate a lot differently to you than to a camera, so
Sure.
I think
Dragon Slayer Rob said, "Ew, people." Um, the way you talk about quarterly plans and planning sounds INTJ, said Mamu. Um, hello from Canada and hello from Canada.
ooh, festive Canada. We basically live in Canada. We live like an hour from Canada
We're very
in Idaho.
close.
For now, we're moving soon, but
A bunch of what's up, psychoanalyzing. Um, to explain they explain the difference of TE and E's position yet. They were asking as we were going through this. I don't know if you want to hit on that more or not, but TE Dom versus TE secondary, how that would.
well, the way I understand it, it's so hard because so much of my learning about personality was done through the lens of me being an INTJ. And so now I'm kind of at the point where am I gonna have to rehaul all my learning? So the way I understand it, your first function is your hero function, meaning that if you're in a pickle, that one is gonna save the day 99% of the time. And so when I think about problems in my life, like what would a problem been? In high school, maybe I procrastinated. And so TE did come to save the day. We're just gonna, really regiment this and get this done. That example kind of lends itself to TE anyways. And then your second function is the parent function. So it's more responsible. It's kind of how you parent yourself and parent others. It's kind of how I've understood. So, like, if you're giving advice to someone, like, especially like parental type advice, like to someone you're giving advice to, you would tend, I think that you would give them more advice from your second function. I think I give plenty of TE advice. I do think I give NI advice. It's hard. It's very blended.
Mhm.
I've always understood the ENTJ. Like, what's hard about this is, so I'm trying to figure out if I'm an ENTJ or INTJ. So I type into YouTube ENTJ versus INTJ, and my video comes up, and it's like, oh, this is the most useless thing. I didn't even watch it. I don't even know. My past understanding has been ENTJs are a lot more SE, being it's their third function, and so in my experience with ENTJs, they're involved in a lot of different stuff. They have their business one, business two, they might be working like three part-time jobs trying to develop these side hustles. That's kind of the impression I've gotten from the young ENTJs I've been around, and they seem a lot more take charge, kind of that commander stereotype, and that's the part that I don't feel like a commander.
Mhm.
However, I feel more like a commander than a lot of INTJs I've been around. I feel less like a commander than the ENTJs I've been around. So yeah, and I do think TE second is responsible. I think when you think of like having a planner, I know ENTJs with a planner. It, and I knew an INTJ with a planner. The INTJ's planner was a lot more minimal. The ENTJ's planner was like a list. It was like this massive 30 thing list they had to do. Now, I don't know if that's particularly like healthy ENTJ thing to do. I think the concept of having a planner is a little bit more TE second, and like actually having a business and actually doing the stuff is a little bit more ENTJ.
Mhm. Um, this is from Redamium. Folks me thinks this INTJ versus ENTJ is merely strategy to generate chatter and interest. Smart Alexis. Okay, we're playing along. Um, which
I promise it's not. There was a
but
time.
I did think it could be useful maybe. So the reason for this video, mostly I would say is like FI breakdown of like it's like
Wow, sweetie.
for a while like ENTJ, INTJ sort of identity crisis. I don't know if FI breakdown points to either INTJ or ENTJ.
Well, okay, so what happened is I got type policed or whatever, and then did a session, and he said ENTJ, and he made a very good argument. I never posted the session, but in the one-on-one session, he made a very good argument for ENTJ, mostly based on the shadow functions, less so on the top functions. And the shadow functions, to be honest, are what I'm less familiar with because they didn't resonate, and so I kind of just pushed that whole thing aside. Where was I going with this? What was the point?
Why we started this video, sort of, if I break down
Oh,
identity.
yes, yes. Okay, so anyway, so that was like a week ago that type session happened, and since then I've really been mulling it over. This is the first time that me thinking that I've been like 50%. I've been like 50-50. So this whole week I've been kind of 50-50. And breakdown is pretty accurate. It's like, well, I thought that I was an INTJ, and if I'm an INTJ, then that means I should grow TE and SE. But if I'm an ENTJ, that's really bad. That's a loop. And so that's the whole wrong growth advice.
Right.
And so it really informs my future. So I'm like, so there have been times like when I did the session with Amy Y like a year ago, I was biased. I'm not going to say that I went into the session completely open-minded. I was like, I'm an INTJ at that moment in time. Now there's always that certainty has wavered over time. At this moment in time, I legitimately do not care which one it comes down to. I do not have a preference for INTJ that I used to. So that's why are doing this live stream, because I legitimately don't care anymore. Whereas I used to. I used to really be like, I have to be an INTJ because everyone says, yeah, for one, the comments about ENTJs are not very nice. The comments about ENTJs are like, they just rush things too much. They're like INTJs, but worse. So don't say mean things about them. Because if someone's new, that's going to influence what they do.
All right. INTJ for sure. ENTJ will never be that accurate psychoanalyzing, because for them that would be very energy lost because it's more theoretical. So maybe ENTJ is not as likely to be in the personality realm.
I do think that's true. I have a friend who's an ENTJ, and we were talking about it was the beginning of my type journey. We both knew about personality hackers. So we're just talking about personality hacker, and I'm thinking I'm an INTJ and she's an ENTJ. She dropped it way earlier. She's not nearly as interested in it. Whereas I've really stuck with it. I think it's yeah, I do kind of think that maybe an ENTJ wouldn't have sat on this for a week. I think I've sat on it. But
Yeah. INTJs take, this is Mamu again, take months to plan, dominant NI, and when the plan finally happens, tool TE, it's usually near perfect. ENTJs start the plan on day 1, dominant TE, and will adjust to problems using tool NI. Which do you feel like more resonates with you?
I think I'm a little less deliberating than a lot of IJs that I know. Like I'm a lot more, like I do think that if I think back to me in high school, I like to think of me in high school because it was before I knew about personality, so it feels kind of like the unadulterated time in my life. In group projects, I was very focused on like, okay, what's the rubric? You know, what's our criteria for success? Who's doing what part? Let's just divvy it up equally. We'll get our parts done, and then do it. Now, I've heard some people say that like TE DOMs in a group project, let's say it's the night before, person X didn't do their share, then the ENTJ will just take it on and they'll solve it for them. I've heard that. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I would not do that. I kind of have more trust that's like, the teacher might dock us as a whole, but she's not going to dock us that much for so and so. I'd be more than willing to throw so and so under the bus. If it means that my grade's gonna be better, I'm like, hey, I'll just put a note in my paper. Hey, so and so didn't do their part. And that's why I just always felt like, if from the teacher's perspective, it's gonna be like immoral or very unfair. I could easily challenge it. They give me a bad grade, I can easily challenge it and say, which I have done on multiple occasions, challenge the grades teachers gave me, and they did increase my grade. One time I had, because I was trying to be valedictorian, so I got an A minus. My grade was an A minus, and that was a different GPA than an A at the school I went to. And so I went and told the teacher, I was like, hey, I'm like 0.3% away from being at an A. Will you please bump me? He was like, no. And I negotiated further and he's like, it's going to be unfair if I bump you and no one else. And I was like, why don't you bump everyone else? If anyone's 0.3%, bump them up. And so he said, okay. That seems ENTJ-ish to me.
Yeah, it's probably a better ENTJ negotiation.
That was a little bit bold thing. Let me grab my water.
Okay. Keep scrolling down. I lost it now. I'm going to go through these a little quicker.
Was there a lot of comments?
Few people. So I guess I read some of these. Okay. Did you watch host Eric's video about you? I'm guessing that's talking with famous people.
Oh,
Or
yeah.
is that different?
That is talking to famous
Okay,
people.
yeah.
Yeah, so he did the type police video on me, which I did watch, and then a couple weeks later, he retracted it because he and I did a type session together.
This person SI is related to showering, question mark.
That's up for debate. Is SI related to showering? I will say that every ISJ I know showers
Yeah.
every single day.
Yeah, Dragon Slayer Rob said cleanliness upkeep, so in a way, yeah, I think there's just daily habits.
It points to sensing.
Yeah. Oh,
I've never done a live before.
yeah.
As a side note, never done a live before because I almost didn't do it today. He's the one who was like, "You should do it as a live," and because I get a little. I'm not sure if you would call. I'm not that familiar with shadow function. Would you call this NE? Critical NE? Because there's like a possibility that someone's gonna say something mean, and then my little FI is gonna be like, and then TE is gonna be like, "But I have to look credible and handle it in a respectable way."
All right, TJ's definitely.
What is it?
Someone said Glueball said I say rule systems versus rule people. I don't know if that was trying to make a
What was that?
ENTJ versus INTJ distinction, but rule systems versus rule people. I don't know if that.
Where are you looking? What comment is this?
Up here. I don't know if
Let's
that's
see.
related to anything.
Oh, it could have just been when we were talking about people. It's
Yeah.
better to rule systems than to rule people.
In what ways did you develop SE?
This set, which you cannot really see because the whiteboard, that was me intentionally trying to make my videos have better SE. So I would say that's a little bit more playing on the offensive than the defensive. DJing was an attempt at me to try to develop SE intentionally. Some of these things I'm not sure that they would have naturally happened, but I just tried to develop them.
Like fashion.
Fashion was a big one. So my very first video that I put out about fashion, the one that I seem a lot like an ISFP in that video, that video was right at the beginning of me trying to develop SE. So fashion. So like if you look at one of my Vlogmas, I'm wearing like this pink Nirvana sweatshirt. That purchase was an attempt at me to do something more bold and flamboyant. I don't know that points to the best SE. And you, so he's an ISFP, so in some ways that manifests for him is he really likes spike ball and tennis and volleyball and stuff like that. So I would do
sports together.
Yeah, so I've tried to make myself do a lot of sports with you, especially quick reaction time sports like spike ball. Volleyball, I've always liked volleyball.
Restless Mosaic. That just sounds like an ISFP title.
Restless Mosaic leaves a lot of comments. I really appreciate it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
All right. My wife seems pretty squarely in the INTJ lane, and she shares both your love of productivity books and spontaneous road trips.
Spontaneous road trips?
Maybe our California trip.
I don't know, it was particularly a spontaneous road trip. It was like when we took that massive, if any of you are familiar, we did this massive road trip, like from southern Idaho down to Las Vegas, San Diego, LA, San Francisco, Lake Tahoe, back to southern Idaho. That was something that we had deliberated on for like 4 months. Never pulled the trigger. It's too expensive. Then we separated. Then we got back together and we're like, you know what? Let's do it. So you could call it sort of spontaneous, but
after a long time playing.
After months of deliberating.
Yeah. In socionics, INTJ.
See, I don't know that much about that. Sorry, I did not interrupt you, but I don't know that much about socionics. But let's continue with the question.
INTJ would be role put on a mask of SI, and ENTJ would be role of FE. So putting on a mask of SI, or putting on a mask of FE, which do you think you relate to more? Can you show me where the question is? Right here.
INTJ would be role put on a mask of SI. ENTJ would be role
put on a role mask of FE.
Are they also saying mask of FE?
Yeah. So do you think you put on more of an FE or more of an SI if you feel like either of those?
Well, I think I've really been nurtured into FE. Like I said, I do think I do put on a mask of FE. If I'm like at church, for example, man, you're really rewarded for FE as a woman at church. But I would say, I don't put on SI. In what world do I put on SI?
Yeah, you really don't like SI that much.
Yeah, sorry to anyone who's an ISJ. I have a strong disdain for SI. Not the people that are SI, but just in myself. And it wants me to use it. No, I do not want to. Which points to, well, I think points to SI polar. If polar's a thing, that's what I do in my head sometimes. I'm like, is it a thing? Do we think the shadow functions are a thing? If they are a thing, then maybe this.
All right.
Maybe I should look into socionics more. What do you guys think of socionics? We'll get to those. How far? Are you close to the bottom?
I'm like fairly close. All right. I think SI is having the ability to choose what to sense, having a preference for structure, planning, basically, while SE is letting your external world decide that reaction. I think you're a TE Dom, so probably two sort of separate thoughts. But Restless Mosaic, again, I think there might be an FI side in your spontaneous road trips. Road trips are thought of as an SE thing, but my wife likes to think during them. And I think the feeling of freedom in them is FI. Yeah, I think road trips can be good for your NI, so they are sort of hitting a few functions.
That's true. If it's a particularly wrong road trip, we do get into
a lot of podcasts and talking.
Oh yeah, road trip is such a good learning time. So many podcasts. What do we do on road trips?
Have you looked at Cognitive Personality, their channel? He has a video on signs on INTJ to see if that resonates with you.
Is that Harry? The INFJ?
I get them all mixed up. Is he objective personality?
No, not objective.
Oh, okay.
No, I haven't really seen their stuff. Cognitive personality theory. Is that Harry?
Okay,
if it's Harry, I did watch his stuff. Besides the thing with Eric, that was the thing that really made me think I could be an ENTJ, because he was talking about that ENTJs can be very independent. I consider myself even more than independent. I consider myself reclusive. But yes, I did watch his videos. He doesn't have an ENTJ versus INTJ video. Wait, where does he? Anyways, whatever it was, I searched all the videos on his channel and I watched all the ones that were relevant. So I watched he has a series on like how to find your type. And I pointed more to ENTJ, I think. And then I looked around at a lot of other people's. A lot of people have ENTJ versus INTJ videos, and a lot of those I was pretty. I hate to be the person that's riding the fence. Okay, in general, I cannot stand people riding the fence. But I'm unfortunately riding the fence a little bit. I was a little 50-50, and I hate it when people are 50-50. I'm like, pick a side, will you? But in Harry's videos, I was leaning more ENTJ, and then in a lot of other people's videos, I was leaning more INTJ. Maybe I should do a little session with Harry. That could be informative.
Cute. All right. Sir Madame, do you cook? How confident are you when you cook?
I never cook.
Yeah.
Jared does look. Well, he's a little ISFP.
I sort of went into cooking versus ENTJ, INTJ, but yeah, you don't really cook. So
no, I don't ever cook. So we have some friends who come over every other. Well, what does that end up being? 6 weeks.
Every other week.
Every 6 weeks.
Yeah.
They were every 6 weeks. So then what did we do last time? Bibimbap.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to pronounce it. And I do more of the directing. You like the directions being read to you, and I like to direct someone in the reading. So I will.
You take care of my TE, and I take care of the SE.
Yeah. That's another thing, that it could be the possibility that I'm an ENTJ who became more balanced because of him, because he's an ISFP. So I think we both potentially balanced each other.
Mm-hmm.
That's another. If I was an INTJ, we probably were worse for each other, for getting each other into loops.
Mm.
And I think overall we've been better. People at church, there was a guy who a few people at church think that I'm more extroverted than you. So I think that's kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But see, then there was like a worship night last night, and I was doing up in the media booth just on the computer. And when it was done, there was like a mingle time. I hate mingle times at church. And there was like all these cookies and stuff. And I just stay up there in the media booth. I'm like, I'll just wait till you get your guitar.
In the dark.
Yeah. I just sat up there in the dark for 20 minutes until he was ready, and then we left. I'm not like.
Yeah.
Of course, it's also the case that there's no TE reason for me to. We're leaving soon. There's no point in me building relationships with these people. None of these people I consider to be resources that are going to help me in anything.
All right. ENTJ elementary school teacher. Yikes.
I'm not an elementary school. No, I'm not an elementary school teacher. My whole plan was I will be a math teacher and then a math professor. That was my long-term plan. So, I the at the now teaching is not a competitive market to get into. You can very easily get into teaching now. The time the school I wanted to get into was kind of competitive or whatever. Anyways, so I did anyway. So I taught eighth grade. Now I did not want to be teaching eighth grade math. That's not what I want to be doing. And then eventually I taught high school math, and it was kind of at that point that I was like, wow, I'm at kind of the peak of what I want to be doing, and I'm not enjoying this. I was like, I don't think I want to be a math professor. I would have liked math professor better than any of it, but no, I never taught elementary school. That guy, on Eric's video, there was this whole people in the comments like, she teaches small children. I never taught small children, unless you consider 14-year-olds small children, and even so, I didn't even.
They're pretty small too.
I didn't even want to. But yeah, no, I don't want kids. I'm more open to adopting, especially an older child. But no, the small children thing. No.
All right, Dragonslayer Rob again. Alexis, are you familiar with Enneagram? We mentioned your type's 5, but he asked what dominant wing and tri-type. Also you've thought about 3 before. He mentioned ENTJs tend to be 3s or 8s. INTJs are more 5-ish. So there is correlation there.
I've always considered to be myself a 5, and I think tri-type I'd be a 5-3-8. 5-wing 4. When I first learned about this is the problem, is that when I first learned about Myers-Briggs and Enneagram, it was within a couple months of each other. I was incredibly depressed, most depressed I've ever been in my entire life, and I was incredibly way more reclusive than now even. So that swayed things because when I was doing all my initial learnings, I was way depressed. Anyway, so I thought I might be an Enneagram 4, and then I thought I might be an Enneagram 5, and I really tousled back those 2, and then I thought 5. Recently, like December-ish of 2021, I thought I could be an Enneagram 3, and I really tossed that around for a while. 3 is a possibility. When I heard Sleeping at Last has this whole Enneagram song series, and when I heard the 8 song, I started crying. And so there's a possibility of me being an 8. It was the only one that made me cry, but for some reason I was like, no, I'm not an 8. I don't resonate. I wouldn't call myself confrontational. However, I love to argue, and so that must be confrontational. I don't know. I love to argue. Now, the FI is the thing that gets in the way of me arguing, but I love to argue. I got into so many arguments in high school, and I loved it. And when I look at times in my life, I was so TE in high school. Like, if I was thinking in high school, was I an ENTJ or INTJ? I was definitely TE dom in high school, I think. When I was in elementary school, that's something I look at too. I don't know when, some people disagree about when you can start looking at type or whatever. In elementary school, I would get in a lot of arguments with my friends because I was too bossy. My friends would be like, why are you bossing me around? Why are you telling me what to do? So that was a source of conflict.
Yeah.
Now, it wasn't a lot of people. It wasn't like every kid in my class I was bossing around. But it's like I had these 3 friends, my 3 best friends, and I would boss them around a lot. My poor sister bossed her around a lot. Boss you around, so, but then that is also kind of dampened out. People, you get a lot of negative messaging when you boss people around. It's like in a friendship setting, people do not enjoy being bossed around, understandably. So then it becomes useful in a work setting if you don't, if it's not so much bossing around as it is like, leadership and making decisions. But then it's hard for it to be damped, like pushed down your whole life, and then all of a sudden in a career setting, like, oh, you got to use it now. It's like, we've told you not to be assertive your whole life, but we need you to be assertive now. So that's hard. I do think, I keep bringing it up, but the whole church setting, gender roles, sexism in a church setting, particular.
Samuel, similar experience to yours. Interesting seeing this. Just realized recently I was an ENFJ after 2 years of thinking I was an INFJ. Realized I was using SE regular, had no idea what TI was, so much makes sense now. And someone else mentioned ENFJs are another type that often feel like they're more introverted. Similar to ENTJs can feel introverted just because we're understanding of extroversion. ENTJs are outcome focused, INTJs are progress focused.
Is that true? I've heard some people make the distinction. I've heard people say people that use TE and FE are outcome focused, and FI and TI are process focused.
Yeah.
And this one, you could make the argument that, oh, those are introverted and extroverted functions that we're pointing to, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm more outcome focused than process focused.
You think so?
Oh, also, I should reiterate this. If anyone has any NETI thoughts,
We don't have anything in the NETS
yeah, we don't. I don't know
pod yet.
anything. I don't know anything about that. So if anyone wants to say anything about that, I'm interested to hear that.
Okay. TE.
This is very helpful. Wow, we've been going for an hour, haven't we? This is. I'm enjoying. I don't know why I was so scared of comments. This is enjoyable.
All right. ENTJ is plan too, but it is not that detailed. More like high level planning.
Detailed. What do you think? Do you think my
You're pretty. I mean, you go into quarterly, monthly,
grab
daily
we
planning.
got the vision book right there?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Okay, I watched Eric talking to famous people. He has this video. It's from years ago, and he's kind of like parodying ENTJs. He's like, "Look, I'm a motivational speaker, and look, I made this goal-setting journal for you guys to fill out, and you guys should work hard. And look, you want to be happy like me. See, I'm happy." And that's kind of ENTJs are like not necessarily happy all the time, or is a stereotype. And I made a goal-setting workbook. So, anyways, okay. So here's the planning as it goes. Okay, so it's there's like 3 things to be filled out per page. So that's all. And this is it starts at the 10-year level, then it goes to the 10-year level, then the yearly level, then the quarterly level, then the monthly level, then the weekly level.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what you call that. I mean, this is quite TE. The whole idea of goal setting, the way I goal set is very NITE.
Yeah.
Goal setting is a little bit more TE than NI. But I've got a whole, in the beginning of the goal setting book, there's a whole visualization section. It's like, sit there and visualize your future and what you want to look like. And I really enjoy that. I can do that for like 20 minutes. I'll just sit there and visualize. I think my attention span is longer than what I've seen of a lot of ENTJs.
All right, I'll ask you part of this question so you don't see the rest. I think the confusion might stem from the TE usage. How do you face situations in your life? Do you just want to briefly describe how you face situations or challenges in your life?
Challenges or?
Yeah.
Like, give me just a sample challenge.
Someone gets hit by a bus.
Oh, jeez.
What do you do?
Okay, so I'm driving by. Someone gets hit by a bus. Oh, wow, this is a terrible scenario. I don't know that I've seen accidents on the side of the road before, but oftentimes there's a ton of people already there, and I'm like, I'm not going to be useful. I just keep on going. I think my skill set's not that good. What could I do? If someone gets hit, this is a terrible tangent.
All right, we'll go a different example. A cupcake business is failing, and you've been asked to help out with that cupcake business.
Okay.
What do you do?
Okay, so I would probably sit down, have a little consultation with them, just ask them a lot of questions. What do they perceive the challenges to be? Then I would probably go in and sit down, spend a day, sit in the business during operating hours, just see what problems are happening that they're unaware of. Then I'd probably sit down with them and say, okay, here's all the issues. This is how they can all be fixed. I think it'd be important for you to prioritize one that you'll really put your energy towards, and then maybe just kind of in a background way, fix the other ones. And at that initial meeting, there would have been something like, you really want to save the business. Why do you really want to save the business?
Yeah, so I'll read through it.
That was a little more TE-ish, I would say.
I would say, I think it points more to NI.
What they say?
So do you try to get a grasp of it by using different perspectives, or you jump into the steps needed? And I would say your first reaction was jumping into their perspective and sitting in the shop and evaluating, and like felt a lot more NI. But
okay.
No, that was an interesting question. Totally shows you're. Oh, this is someone else. Okay. Is it possible for an FE polar to almost always know how one is feeling accurately?
Isn't that FI?
Yeah, that's my understanding is
No,
knowing your own feelings accurately would be FI. Others' feelings would be FE.
I would think I would think that ENTJs have a hard time knowing their own feelings, and I would think INTJs would do know. Now, introverted feeling, some people make I have a hard time with precise distinction. Some people do make the distinction between feelings, emotions,
Mhm,
values. These are all kind of words I lump into FI, but some people do make more precise distinctions than I make.
mhm,
Um, um, yeah, I would think. Well, yeah, because you're an ISFP, you know how you're feeling.
mhm.
Yeah, and then I would think, yeah, yeah, that I would think that's FI. What was the
Mhm.
question? I got
It
sidetracked.
was just asking about FI polar and,
Oh, wait, was it FI polar?
no, is it possible for an FE polar to almost always know how one is feeling accurately?
Oh, well, see, I'm not sure if they're saying that I always know how I'm feeling, but I don't think I do.
Yeah.
I'll be sitting there sometimes feeling kind of like something. I can't even name it. So then we got this. We haven't used it in a long time. But then we got this bookmark. It was a list of feelings so that I would scan
Mhm,
down at
mhm,
what am I feeling. And I'm like, okay, this is what I'm feeling. And then we haven't used that in a long time, but that was helpful. And then now what I've started doing is I've started outsourcing you and then saying, how do you think I'm feeling right now? And then he's a very good. He'll think, I think you're probably feeling this, this, and this. And then he's accurate. It's very helpful. I'm like, wow, I didn't even think of that.
Alright. INTP mentor said, "ENTJ will be faster movements. I worked with an INTJ as a boss. He deliberated before making decisions. Unless his FI kicked in under stress, then he went into Steve Jobs mode." So, hmm,
I deliberate a lot. One thing I heard, I've been watching a ton of ENTJ, INTJ videos in the last week, and one thing that they mentioned was that ENTJs can come off more judgmental. They lead with a judging function. They're more decisive. They're supposedly more quick to speak, and so they can come off more judgmental. So I am pretty judgmental, I think. So I asked my dad, I was like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how judgmental do you think I am? And I'm just, what do you think? He's like, I think that you're pretty judgmental, but you don't vocalize it. I think that's very true. And so I was like, so he's like, ISTP. I feel bad. I feel bad putting him in this bad. I'm realizing now it was a bad FE position that I put him in. Yeah, you actually stayed around after and you explained to him.
yeah.
So I asked my dad. I was like, do you think how judgmental do you think I am on a scale of 1 to 10? And he kind of hesitated to answer, and then eventually he said 7. I think you're 7 on a scale of 1 to 10. And I was like, maybe that points more to ENTJ. I don't know.
Mhm,
Eh, I don't know. Supposedly ENTJs are a little bit more black and white with their judgments. Um, so anyway, so I asked my dad, okay, great, thanks. So I walk out of the room and then you stick around and you're like, she wants to know this because she's deliberating on your type and you kind of like I'll pick it up by what I suppose are a little bit of the FE pieces.
Hmm. Um, how do y'all feel about the cognitive personality theory channel? That's one that I don't know for certain
That's
what it
Harry's.
is. Oh, it is Harry's.
Yes.
Okay. We like it. Well,
we
I like it.
really like it. Oh yeah,
Uh,
I think it's good. I think he says a lot. TI makes a lot of distinctions, and he's a very TI heavy INFJ, and sometimes TI can err on the side of just. It almost seems like creating distinctions for just. It's like they feel like they're not valuable if they're not creating some sort of distinction. So they'll be like, "You heard a lot of people say this and this and this and this, but it's actually this." Which it's a skill of TI.
mhm.
It's not a negative thing, but sometimes it can be carried a little too far. So anyways, with that being said, I do like his channel. Oh, some of what he says is it's very different from what kind of the mainstream advice is. And that's not bad necessarily, but it makes me question a little bit like why is it so different?
Mhm.
In general, he's very thought out. I'm not sure how he films his videos, but I think he may read. I get the vibe that he reads off a paper and that could be part of the precision. Great vocabulary, my gosh. I have to put on subtitles when I watch him.
My gut feeling just likes him a lot.
Yeah.
He just seems like a good person.
He does. He does seem like a good person.
All right. Reading.
I thought anyway, and that's one thing I thought I'll just get I was like, I'll just get a session from him because he
Mm,
seems precise,
mhm,
and he's one of the only people that mentions ENTJs aren't always the commander that people make them out to be, and so brusque.
right.
And if that's I would identify with that.
Yeah. By reading a lot of nonfiction how-to books, that can be a form of you interfacing with the external world by getting external facts to use in life, hence being a cognitive extrovert, which, yeah,
I
there is a lot of that.
this is what I've thought about that as well. That's a very good point. I when I'm introverting, it's always with something, like, I'm watching a YouTube video, I'm, reading a book. So then you say to yourself, colloquially, the way the everyday person says it, they're not gonna call that extroverting if you're alone with a book, but it is interfacing with the external world. I
Mhm.
am never if I'm a I'm never just sitting there thinking, well, I don't wanna say when I'm driving. Driving's the time that I do a lot of that, I suppose, because I'm kind of on autopilot. But most of the time, it's a book triggered an insight in me, and then I'll go into NI for a little bit, and and then I think about the book again until there's one sentence. I'm like, "Oh, that's insightful," and then I go and I think about it, and that's kind of what I do. I don't know if no one does this or if INJs do this, but it's not the case for me that I'm just sitting there and an insight comes from absolutely nowhere. It's maybe occasionally. It usually, I read a book, a sentence stands out to me, and then an insight comes to me. And it's not the insight that was in the book. It's like it is a separate insight, but I can always trace back to like some external thing that triggered it, and that is something that Harry mentioned.
INTP mentor again. Any critic might criticize. So we asked about any critic. If anyone has anything about any or
Good.
TI.
Any critic. That's
Any.
ENTJ, right?
So yeah,
I think that's ENTJ.
ENTJ. Any critic might criticize others' imaginations or quickly shoot down brainstorming.
Oh, I don't do that.
Yeah, you don't do that. You love
I
brainstorming.
love brainstorming. I think I called this video a brainstorming video.
Yeah, you did. Oh, happy
I
one.
love okay, this whiteboard previously, before this whiteboard had a ton of sticky notes on it. And then we're like, oh, we better erase this so there's room for it.
Yeah. Okay. This is Mamu. Your sarcasm and witty quiet side comments make me think INTJ. Do ENTJs do this?
Hmm.
I think ENTJs TJs do that.
Really. Can you picture Liberty doing that?
Yeah, I've seen.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Mhm.
I
Maybe
I
not
think my
as.
humor is quieter than
Mhm.
some ENTJ, because SE can be, it's present. It can be loud, not always, but but volume wise, and whereas yeah, I do a lot of under my breath humor
Mhm.
to the point where people don't hear me.
Right.
This, you know what he does? I will say a joke. No one else hears it because I said it so quietly, and then he says it to the group, and
Takes
everyone
credit for
laughs
it.
like a good husband.
Oh, okay. We earlier also we were looking at the comments rule systems versus rule people.
Oh,
So they were talking. Glueball said rule systems slash process equals ENTJ. Want to rule people slash companies equals ENTJ.
wait, what's the difference
So would
between?
you rather rule systems and a process? Like, would you rather put together systems and a process, or would you rather rule people?
I'm not sure exactly what that would look like. I understand what it would look like to rule people or companies. I'm not sure exactly what that looks like to rule.
I guess like a CEO or like the designer of the way, like a business model, like a business model creator. Like you're writing out the systems for McDonald's franchises. Or would it be more interesting to own a
Mm.
franchise?
I I would rather be in charge of that. No, okay, well, see, so I would be more skilled in the system process part, and I would have more fun with system process part.
Okay.
However, there's always this part of me that says, "But we want to make a lot of money and have a big house on a lake. Can we do that if we don't rule people?" It's this we
Mm,
discussion that it's kind of like the cognitive functions. It's, on the movie Inside Out, there's
yeah.
all these different people. It's kind of like that. So we've got all these people, cognitive functions, we're kind of talking to each other. It's like, okay, this is what we want to do, but we want to make money. And so what we want to do needs to also make money. We need to find something where those overlap.
Hmm. Hmm. You should look into socionics, LIE, ENTJ, and interestingly enough, you're married to your dual, ISFP. That was from MJ.
It's very interesting being whatever type I am, we're the same quadra.
Mm-hmm.
That's been very interesting. Have you liked that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Don't have to deal with any TIFE or SA.
Why? Why do you say it like that?
Not that I don't have to deal with it, but it just makes it simpler, I think. Because when I'm
Especially
thinking
the judging functions. When you have different judging functions, I do see clashes between people.
yeah. So
However, then having the same perceiving functions, I think we think sometimes on a similar train of thought. And it might be, sometimes I think it'd be good to have an any or some other function to spice it up, the thought train we go on.
All right. Are NPs better at using SI and sticking to a routine than NJs? Using SI and sticking to a routine than NJs.
It's gonna be like an EN. The ENFPs I know. Well, bad in some ways, good in some ways.
Yeah. It's like selective about which ones they're good at.
Right. They pick, which routines. I would think that, I would think that if you were SI-polar, you're just crap at routines. So ENFJ, ENTJ, I would think is real terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting question. Okay. Do you prefer people to come to you with problems, or do you prefer to go to people to look for problems? Do you prefer people come to you with problems, or for you to go to people with problems, like looking for the problems?
To look for problems. What would that be? To go looking? Why would you go looking for problems? Like, it's an example that, like, I come to you and like, hey, Gary, you have any problems that you need help with? Is it like that?
Or maybe you notice a problem and you want to go up to them.
Oh, well, that happens. But like, okay, so like I said last night in the media booth, I noticed that they were doing something like they could have been doing it better. Now, what I would like to do is just be like, just tell them, hey, okay, you need to do this and you're doing this. But no one wants to be told that. I'm not their boss in any way. And, I've done that sort of thing in the past. And you get some bad messaging. People do not like that. So then what do? So then I just like, it's a little passive aggressive now. But I'm just like, hey, why is it going dark? But I kind of made it seem like, oh, it's the computer's fault. It's not your fault. Like, why does it keep going dark when you, why does the stage keep going dark? So I'm digressing. You prefer people to come to you with problems. No, I don't want problems in general. I don't want to find problems. I don't want people to come to me with problems.
It could also be just, I may have misinterpreted the question. So like there's a problem that's going on. Would you rather someone come to you with that, or would you go to someone to talk about that?
I would want to go to them.
You'd want to go to them. Because basically they're talking about direct initiating control or direct responding.
Either one is fine, just as long as the communication happens. And I think a lot of times communication falls through the cracks. And so I just want to make sure we've discussed who's in charge of fixing this problem.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe Mama can clarify. It'll be a little bit before we get there, probably, but later in the comments.
Yeah, if you clarify, we'll come back to it. Yeah, Dragon Slayer Rob said the same. Depends as far as the SI question. NPs can be pretty bad at it. SJs are the good SI users. It's true.
Yeah.
More about the cooking.
This cooking part's fascinating.
Okay. My impression, this is Restless Mosaic, is that TENI likes work in existing systems and NITE prefers the same skills in their own system.
Look in here.
For
some reason, it's hard for me to comprehend some of these if I'm not visually seeing them.
It'll always be at the top there.
Oh, okay. My impression is that TENI likes work in existing systems. And NITE prefers the same skills. I'm wondering if that means same skills as the TENI or meaning repetitive in their own system. But I work in government where elected officials are TEing all over, so I'm biased. That's so funny. This is a tangent, but it cracks me up when people are certain of like some sort of governmental conspiracy, and I'm like, It's usually not TE
Hmm.
users that think there's a government conspiracy. Like, have you ever been in any sort of bureaucratic thing? It's just
Right.
it's a ton of STJs in in power. No, the closest thing to a conspiracy is just that there's too much paperwork and hoops to jump through. Um, but I don't know that I really like to well, okay, here's the deal. So when I script videos, for example, I tried for the longest time to make my own system. I was like, "Okay, we're gonna find the
Mm.
perfect formula. It gets people's attention. It does this. It does this. It does this." And for the longest time, I've been doing this for like 2 years, and I'm still trying to find the perfect system. It occurred to me a couple weeks ago. I was like, "Oh, you know what? In high school, we had to do persuasive speeches. I wonder if that outline's any good." I just kind of assumed it'd be bad. I just kind of assumed. I looked at it and I was like, there were all sorts of different templates. Some were worse than others, and I was like, "This is actually pretty good." I was like, "Why haven't I?" I'm like, "There are existing templates. Why am I trying to make my own?"
Mm.
I don't know. I'm not sure exactly the answer to this question. That's very inconclusive. I'm not quite. I don't know. I'm not quite understanding.
Here's a good one from Russell Smith too. The INTJs I know get frustrated with the system way faster than ENTJs do because they apply NI to the system first and see it's headed for disaster with the system.
I get frustrated with I'm so frustrated with systems. That was probably the number one reason why I got out of well, there are a few reasons. One, it was what I would consider to be SE draining. It was physically draining. It was less teaching and it was more like managing bodies is what it felt like.
Mhm.
Um, the other reason is that the system is incredibly inefficient, very limiting. Pay is not. If I wanted a significant jump in pay, I'd have to be a principal. You'd have to start out being a disciplined principal. I do not want to do that. Like maybe eventually, years and years and years later, I would be the top principal. Maybe I would like that. But I was like, I still don't think I'd like that. I'd like maybe okay, maybe superintendent. But the problem with this trajectory is this is years long, and I would like the end point, I think, but I don't want to spend 40 years getting to the end point.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, we like for example, on the worship team, I what I notice right away is things that are inefficient. I'm like, okay, this should have been sequenced in this way because it would have flown, more efficiently. And so this vocal thing could have been being troubleshooted while they were doing this meeting instead of doing the meeting, then finding out there's troubleshooting, then everyone's waiting around.
Mhm. Mhm.
I would say I have a high frustration for systems very often.
Yeah. Someone asked, "Give me an example of you bossing people in school or whatever."
No bossy.
Yeah.
Can we think of examples? Okay,
You can
so the youngest example I can think, I was really young, like probably 4. My mom's an ISFJ, so she's told the story. She likes the story. She's told the story a lot. We were, I don't remember the story, but I guess we were getting in the car, and I'm like, "Mom, make sure you have the keys." And she's like, "I have the keys." And I was like, "Show me." Like, I just didn't believe her, I guess. So the concept is all strange. So you have this 4-year-old telling the parent, "Do you have the keys?" My mom's not even a forgetful person, She's an ISFJ. I wouldn't put ISFJs in the whole, like, forgetful it's like she's an EP or something, like, some types more known for forgetfulness.
Yeah.
Um, or like, so I'm 6 years older than my sister, so it would have been when she was probably 4 and I was probably 10. And my mom's like, "Go play dolls with your sister." And I, like, didn't really want to or whatever, but we go play dolls, so I obliged my sister, and I'm like, "Okay." My sister's an ENFP. I don't think that's really relevant to the story, but she is. And, so we're playing dolls, and I have this idea, this is how the plot's gonna go. Her doll's gonna do this, and then this, and then this, and this is the plot. This is the plot of how the dolls are gonna go. So I would be like, "Okay, now your doll says this." And after a while, she's like, "But I don't want it to say that. I wanted to do this." And I'm like, "Well, just you'll see, you'll see, you'll see." And then usually what would happen is something bad would happen to her character, not to my characters, but something bad would happen to her characters. And eventually she's like, "Why do my characters keep getting divorces and dying and all this stuff?" And I'm like, "Oh, don't worry, it'll come around, it'll come around." Now this would take a while. Now part of it, there was a part of me that was antagonizing her so that I wouldn't have to play dolls again. That was the thing. In elementary school, all the girls were wanting to play dolls and house and all this stuff. I did not care. I did not want to do any of that. Recess is kind of a weird spot, I would say, for ENTJs and INTJs. Here's a bossiness example at recess. there's a tire swing. 3 people could sit on the tire swing at recess. And so I think this was the teacher's kind of ploy to get the kids to learn how to count in elementary school. But the rule was the kids in line would count to 100, and then those kids' turn was done. So they'd get off 3 more kids. I took it upon myself to be in charge of the counting and making sure the counting
cadence.
was at a fair pace. I don't want you to count really fast when I'm on. And even while I was on the tire swing, I was not even enjoying my time being on the tire swing because I'm so focused on the counting. I'm like, okay, I'm like still leading the counting.
Mhm.
That all sounds very ENTJ.
Does. Okay, another any, coming back to any nemesis, which is that INTJ?
I don't know.
Okay.
You should just Google it. Just Google it.
Google it. Okay.
Because I don't want to have this poor person knowledge go back to it.
Nemesis. Any villain?
I mean, yeah, it's an INTJ. Okay.
Okay, great. All right. So INTJ, any in the 5th spot, can cause you to be suspicious of other people's intentions, shoot down their ideas, and can get overwhelmed by too many options.
I do get overwhelmed by too many options. I don't know that I don't feel that I shoot down other people's ideas. Do you think I do that?
No, I mean, both of them are sort of, not like in brainstorming, shooting down ideas. So, you can resonate with some of it.
Cause you to be, I am very suspicious of other people's intentions.
Okay.
I heard that was an ENTJ thing somewhere else. That's the thing. Some of this information is kind of conflicting.
Yeah. All right. Back to cooking again. There's a lot of cooking ones. My ENTJ, it basically seems like the consensus is that ENTJs like to cook. INTJs don't. So my ENTJ dad, boyfriend, and friend all cooked with a glass of wine and loved to take charge, like being on a stage. My ENTJ friends and relatives, no way. Seems like ENTJs like cooking, having friends over for cooking and stuff. Which is an interesting observation.
It's an interesting observation, yeah. I do not like to cook at all. I like to boss you around while you cook. Well, I sit there. That's the part I like. I like the part where I just sit and don't move. But I did plan a murder mystery party. I loved it. That was my project for November or October, whatever month it was. I think that points to badass. I got that right there. But I can't name the month. It was meant to be a Halloween party, but it was November. I loved that. Now, once people got there, I love explaining logistics of things. Okay, we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and it's going to flow smoothly, and people get envelopes at the start of every act, and I make sure that's all organized, all of that whole thing. Now, the part where they get there, and I'm welcoming them, I was, like, very deer in the headlights. Also, an oversight about that murder mystery party was there's a lot of mingling in murder mystery parties. I don't know, I had forgotten that aspect of it. And so then I hadn't realized, I was like, oh, shoot. I need to mingle. And because murder mystery parties are best when there's like 20 people, that's a lot of people. I don't know all of them that well. So that was a little awkward. But I love planning parties. Not that often, but let's say like once a year, I'll plan a party and it is going to be not, I don't know if over the top is the word. It's more lavish. I don't think lavish is the word, but it's more over the top than a lot of parties that I go to.
Yeah.
We brought in a pool table.
You spent a lot of time on it.
We cleared out all the furniture. Yeah.
Eric Wynn commented
a
few times.
Yes.
He said, I have a lot of thoughts, but I have to run for work thing right now. Send me a message. Call isn't able to clarify things. He commented a few times. So we'll see. So, Peter, dentist. Effie Polar does not see the point of activities revolving around excessive displays of emotion or behavior that does not reach a concrete or tangible outcome. They would rather keep conversations serious and to the point, for she is overwhelmed by such emotional expression, making it quite difficult to express themselves.
I need to read that. That was a lot.
Yeah, from the top there.
Polar does not see the point of activities revolving around excessive displays of emotion. Okay. I also do not see what's an example of something that has an excessive display of emotion? Like what emotion would
acting? Does that count?
Acting? Would that count? Or behavior that does not reach a concrete or tangible outcome. They would rather keep conversation serious and to the point, for she is overwhelmed by such emotional expression, making it quite difficult to express themselves. I do keep conversation serious and to the point, I think. If people are displaying emotion, I do not know what to do with it. you and I disagree a lot of times on what emotion someone, will walk away from someone. I'm like, wow, they were upset. And you're like, no, they were not.
Mhm.
Or I'll think someone said something really rude. I'm like, why did they, or not, maybe it's not even rude, but I'm like, why did they even say that? And you're like, that was sarcastic. And I'm like, no, it wasn't. And then you're like, yeah, and you're like adamant. It was sarcasm.
Yeah.
And I'm like, maybe it was. That
Yeah.
happens with YouTube comments. You and I disagree about the intent of YouTube comments a lot.
Mhm.
I'm like, this person's being so rude. And you're like, that's a joke.
Yeah. Okay, then the same person talked about SI polar. SI polar has little patience for sitting back and focusing on how they can physically better themselves in the moment, especially if they're involved in what they view as a very important matter. SI would much rather try to act on their long-term priorities instead of their physical comfort, resulting in problems as an ability to be aware or care about present realities.
That's okay. As a Polish, I have a little patience for sitting back and focusing on how they can physically, is the emphasis on physically?
Hmm.
I do not care about physically bettering myself. Well, mm, mm,
Yeah, I think that I mean, like if you're involved in something you view as important, I think you lose track of your physical senses, like drinking water, for example, eating food. There's like basic things that.
yeah, I drink water more often as a awkward tick. Would you call it a tick?
Mm,
Than because I'm thirsty.
right. Um, Jesse No Religion says, so I've tested multiple times as INTJ 5 Wing 4, and a lot of what you say tends to resonate with me. Um,
I do get those sort of comments a lot.
mhm,
What you're saying resonates a lot with me.
yeah,
Now, a
a
lot of
lot of,
people are mistyped, probably.
yeah. Gobtree said, can someone confirm to me if the stream will be on her channel? Yeah, you're not deleting it after it ends, right?
Yeah, I've never streamed before, so there's a possibility it'll accidentally be deleted, but
As far as we're aware, it'll stay on.
it'll be on the channel. Yeah.
Um, um, if you are set on your functions, not type, maybe just leave it for now. Use your NI and let yourself stew until you get a new, better insight when you keep driving forward.
Mm, mm. Mm.
More stewing for you.
Stewing. I don't know. Not a lot good comes when I stew. But I think it's a valuable point.
um. Okay. Peter Dentist again says an ENTJ is a positivist and an INTJ is a
Ooh.
negativist.
Is there a philosophical such thing as a positivist? Like, is there a more specific definition of those words, or does it just mean what it seems like it means?
I think it just means what they're
Like
talking
you
about.
tend to
But
be optimistic or pessimistic?
yeah.
Is that what you think it means?
Yeah.
We're looking it up right now. Positivist. Oh, positive school of thought.
Positivism, any system that confines itself to data of experience and excludes a priori or metaphysical speculations. I'm just hitting us with big words.
Wow, good thing we looked this up. Right?
Negativism.
If this is what they mean.
The practice of being or tendency to be negative or skeptical.
Oh no, click philosophy, because I think that's just saying.
Resist external commands, suggestions, or expectations. Any system of negative philosophy is agnosticism or skepticism.
Oh, agnostic.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh. What do
Oh
you think?
yeah.
What
And
do
the
you
person
think?
under there said I'm super nihilistic, which would be a negativist.
Which one do you think?
Hmm.
I I really have to pee. I also don't want to stop this.
We're getting, I think, close to the bottom. I say that, but
I know those keep coming.
Yeah.
It's getting kind of long, also.
All right. Let me just scroll through some of these.
Okay, let's just try to wrap this up. Even though this is enjoyable. This is what we'll probably do. We'll probably read. Let's keep reading the comments, and then at the end, I want people to just take a vote.
Okay.
Not that that's going to be
Nice.
conclusive, but I am curious.
We'll just have Okay. I think if you simply engage with a few ENTJs, it would become very clear what order your preferences were. We don't know a ton of ENTJs, so
We don't know a ton of
helpful
ENTJs
to
or
know more.
INTJs. Now, here's the deal.
Mhm,
We know Liberty, and when I hang around Liberty, I'm like, wow, I'm way more introverted than her. She's an ENTJ.
mhm.
We only knew Andy. Now we know some other people who we speculate could be, but The only people we're sure of are like Liberty and Andy, and that is a really small.
Yeah. Yeah.
Andy is like an INTJ to the max. Andy was like very, very quiet, very reclusive, very NI with all of his insights. He also had his whole blueprint for his mansion
Yeah.
that he's gonna have. Now that seems a little INTJ-ish, but he's definitely an INTJ. I notice a little bit more like pride in that case, and more like go with the flow, fun on Liberty's end.
Mm-hmm. All right, Mamu. Mamu's been a great contributor. When
Great work,
when
Mamu.
INTJs are in action, they look like an ENTJ. As the extroverted function, TE is more easily seen by others. Yet INTJ will eventually get exhausted by using TE and disappear to recharge. Do you resonate?
Where is this? Let me see. Okay. As the extroverted function, TE is more easily seen by others. Yet INTJ will eventually get exhausted by using TE and disappear to recharge. I do get exhausted from TEing. It's kind of a paradox. I get energy from. So what happens is I wake up in the morning and I'm like, these are 3 things I need to get done. I will be stressed out until I get these things done. Then I get them done, and I feel great. I feel amazing. It's like I get so much energy. It's not from the thing itself, but it's like after the fact, I'm like, wow, I can live, I can breathe, I can just do whatever, and I just feel so great. Um, I do specifically try to have it like a 2-hour workday because I read the 4-hour work week, and then I was doing 15-minute work days as a means of testing that.
Mm-hmm.
And then pros and cons to it. I learned a lot of stuff, but I wouldn't continue that long term.
Mm-hmm.
I could stand to work more sometimes, I think. It's like I'm kind of a workaholic in my mind, but in my body, I'm not. Like I'm always thinking about work, always, but I'm not always actually acting upon that.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah, I think we've about hit all the yeah, we've hit all the comments. The main ones.
You do what you are, what you do, not what you say you'll do. Nice
A
quote.
great closing quote from Carl Gustav Jung.
Okay, sweet. Okay, so why don't you all comment what type you think I am? You won't necessarily be conclusive,
Yeah.
but I'm just curious to see what people think. So yeah, we'll just have everybody comment. Do you think ENTJ or INTJ? And then we'll hop off. I will mull over. Now, while people are commenting their things, I was doing a lot of personality stuff, and then I decided I wanted to do more personal development stuff. I'm at the point now where this kind of, if it turned out I was an ENTJ, that would kind of reinvigorate me toward personality a little bit, and I was getting a little bored with it, and so this could re-excite me. I could get into socionics, like the stuff I never really got into previously. So I think that's a lot of people have asked in recent, like commented on recent videos, like, are you going to keep doing personality stuff? Like, what's happening? I may, or I may not. I probably will. I think it's inevitable. I probably will do personality stuff again at some point. It's just a matter of how interested I am in it, because I tend to go in phases where I'm really interested in personal development and then I'm really interested in personality, and it goes back and forth. So I imagine my channel will continue to have phases. I'm getting to the end of that personal development phase. I'm getting kind of tired of it. Personal development's good for the start of the year anyways, for analytics wise.
As they're also answering, what would you rather be, an ENTJ or INTJ?
Oh, what would I rather be? In the past I would have said INTJ. At the moment I'm fine with whatever. I think I would rather be it's very close. I think I'd rather be an ENTJ.
Mm-hmm.
That's a question you made up. Very FI.
Yeah.
This is how we tell what type you are. What do you want to be?
That'd be my typing session. What type do you think you are? What kind do you feel you are? All right. So there's not a ton, but it looks like most people are saying INTJ, 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 INTJ. 1, 2, 3, 4. I would say just one. Looks like one person said ENTJ.
I'm not sure. Toss a coin.
INTJ, but not sure. Toss a coin. Head for ENTJ number. ENTJs are workaholics. A lot of T and I things. Did this help?
Interesting. Did this help? One thing it helped with is I felt like there was a lot of thoughts in my mind, and I was just getting so tired of this confusion soup in my head. And so it helped with that. Sometimes if something's just on my mind and it's been on my mind for a week, I'm like, I just need to do something with this, and then I feel a lot better. So I think from a feeling, like an FI perspective, it's like, okay, we're not so. I don't know. That might not actually be an FI perspective. I feel less confused, less confusion soup in my head. I also think it did kind of help doing a live stream, because I've never done a live stream before. I was a little scared to do a live stream. I was just like, I don't know, what are people going to say? They're going to have bad intentions. What are they going to do? They're going to attack me. I don't know.
Yeah.
I get scared of comments for some reason. So I appreciate everyone's comments. So you guys have made this a really good experience. That was my attempt at FE. I was a little put that all over there. Yeah, so I really enjoyed this. I really liked a lot of. I thought they had valuable things to say
Mhm.
and good questions.
Yeah,
Kind of,
a lot of
besides
good.
you and I, after a while, you and I talking about something, it's just kind of the same.
Mhm.
So it's good. I like the new input. Did you have anything else on here?
No. You already addressed the personality content. Yeah.
Oh.
So
If I land on see, if I say land on ENTJ, as if I'll probably never be 100% certain. That's just kind of the nature of how I do things. But if I land on ENTJ, that is going to be annoying for the sake of my past MBTI content, because when I made, like, for example, I have a few videos on INTJs, and when I made those videos, I was just describing myself and my own personal experience. And if it turns out I'm an ENTJ, all those INTJ videos are actually about ENTJs. Or at least I would think.
Yeah.
So it causes some kind of issues, but
Sure.
that I would prefer to not have to deal with. But I guess I'll just
So
take that
potentially
as
some
as it comes.
reworking the videos if that comes up.
I don't even know if I'd rework them. I'd probably just give some announcement, be like, "Hey, so take my other stuff with a grain of salt. Thanks, bye."
All right. Yeah, I don't think we have a ton. I think we left comments on after, so I think you should still be able to comment if you have.
Oh, not live stream comments, but
Yeah, after
under,
this.
under the video.
Yeah, if you're watching after the stream,
Yeah.
you can comment your type that you think still.
Yes, and if you're someone who's not live right now, but in the future will be watching this after it's live, I would be interested in your comments too. I'll still be reading the comments as well, so that would be very interesting. Sweet. Oh, thanks for being here,
Sweet.
Gary.
Mm-hmm.
Cute. Okay. Sweet. Have a good night, guys. And film tomorrow. This was my idea for filming tomorrow. What am I going to do instead? I have to think about what I'm going to do instead. This was planned for tomorrow, and I was just getting nervous, so I was like, I need to just do it. So I'm getting nervous. That's a little spontaneous.
Oh, Mamu said you're a cool individual.
Aw. Thanks, Mamu.
All right. Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.